It was supposed to be simple. Just one of those rare moments where everyone shows up, pretends the past didn't happen, and acts like a perfectly stitched together family. My aunt had spent months planning it, booking a big farmhouse on the edge of the countryside, coordinating schedules, and insisting that this time, no one had an excuse not to come. When we arrived, the place looked like something out of a postcard. A wide wooden porch wrapped around the house, strings of warm lights hanging overhead, and long tables set up outside for dinner. Kids were already running across the yard, chasing each other with that kind of carefree laughter that only exists before life gets complicated. For a moment, standing there with my bag in hand, I actually felt something close to peace. Inside, the house buzzed with noise. My cousins were arguing over rooms, my uncles were hauling in coolers, and my aunt was already calling out instructions like a general preparing for battle. The smell of food filled the air, grilled meat, spices, fresh bread, and it made everything feel warm, familiar. And then there was my dad. He walked in like he owned the place, smiling, greeting everyone, clapping shoulders, cracking jokes. People naturally gathered around him, drawn to his energy. He had always been like that. Someone who filled space without trying, someone who made you feel like things were under control just by being there. "Look who finally showed up," he said when he saw me, pulling me into a quick hug. "You almost missed the best part." "The best part hasn't even started yet," I laughed. "Oh, it has," he said, grinning. "Free food and no responsibilities. Doesn't get better than this." My mom walked in just behind him, smiling softly. She didn't demand attention the way he did, but there was something steady about her presence. Calm. Grounding. She slipped her hand into his arm like it belonged there, like it had always belonged there. Watching them together, you'd never question anything. They looked solid, like one of those couples that had figured life out, that had survived everything, and come out stronger. That illusion held for exactly one evening. After dinner, when the sky had turned deep blue, and the air cooled just enough to make sitting outside perfect, my aunt clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. Okay, listen up," she called out, grinning like she was about to reveal the highlight of the night. "I've got something fun planned." A collective groan rose from the group, mixed with laughter. "It's not a game, don't worry," she added quickly. "Well, not exactly." She disappeared inside for a moment and came back carrying a box. "This," she said, holding it up dramatically, "is a DNA testing kit." There were a few confused looks, a couple of raised eyebrows. "For ancestry," she clarified. "I thought it would be fun if we all did it together. You know, see where we come from, maybe discover something interesting about our roots." My cousin laughed. "What? Like finding out we're secretly royalty?" "Exactly," my aunt said. "Or pirates. Or something cooler than whatever we are now." The mood shifted instantly. Curiosity replaced confusion. People leaned in, asking questions, joking about what they might find. "Come on," she urged. "It'll be fun. And we can all compare results when they come back." The kits were passed around one by one. Small plastic tubes, instruction cards, nothing complicated. Just a simple cheek swab. I remember hesitating for a second, turning the kit in my hands. It felt strangely personal for something everyone was treating like a party activity. "Don't overthink it," my dad said, noticing my pause. "It's just science." "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Just science." We all did it together, sitting around the table like it was some kind of ritual. People laughed at how awkward it felt, made faces, teased each other. My aunt insisted on taking pictures, half the family with swabs in their mouths, looking ridiculous. My dad played along the most. "Imagine if I find out I'm part king," he joked. "You'll all have to start treating me differently." "You already think you're royalty," my mom shot back lightly. He laughed, leaning back in his chair. "Can you blame me?" Everyone joined in. Nothing about that moment felt heavy. Nothing felt like it mattered beyond a bit of entertainment, and a story to tell later. If there were secrets in that room, they stayed hidden. Later that night, after most people had gone inside, I stepped out onto the porch. The air was cooler now, quieter. The chaos of the evening had settled into something softer, low conversations, distant laughter, the occasional creak of wood as someone shifted in their chair. My dad was already out there, sitting alone with a drink in his hand. Escaping the madness. He asked when he saw me. Something like that, I said, sitting down beside him. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out into the dark yard. You think anything interesting will come out of those tests? I asked eventually. He shrugged. Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, it doesn't really change anything. There was something about the way he said it, casual, almost dismissive. Yeah, I agreed. I guess it's just for fun. Exactly, he said, taking a sip of his drink. People get too caught up in that stuff. At the end of the day, family is what you build, not what some test tells you. I nodded, not thinking much of it at the time. It sounded like one of his usual life lessons, the kind he tossed out effortlessly, like he had everything figured out. Inside, my mom's laughter drifted through the open door. He glanced back toward it, a small smile forming on his face. Your mom's happy, he said quietly. She usually is, I replied. He didn't respond right away. Just stared out into the darkness, his expression unreadable for a brief moment before the familiar confidence slipped back into place. Good, he said finally. That's what matters. I didn't realize then how much weight that moment carried. How close we were to everything unraveling. Because to me, it was just another night. Another family gathering. Another memory that would fade into the background of all the others. I went to bed that night feeling full, of food, of laughter, of the kind of comfort you only get when you believe everything in your life is exactly where it should be. I had no idea that in a few weeks, a single notification would rewrite everything I thought I knew. What we believed was just a harmless test was already quietly working its way toward the truth. The results didn't arrive with drama. There was no warning, no sense that anything was about to shift. It started like any other ordinary afternoon, the kind you don't remember until something forces you to. My phone buzzed while I was halfway through scrolling mindlessly, barely paying attention. A notification from the DNA app. For a second, I didn't even register what it was. Then it clicked. Results are ready. I sat up a little straighter, curiosity flickering to life. It had been a few weeks since the reunion, and honestly, I had almost forgotten about the whole thing. It had felt like such a small, insignificant activity at the time, something we did for laughs, for stories. I opened the app. At first, everything looked normal. Percentages, regions, distant relatives I didn't recognize. It was exactly what I expected, mildly interesting, nothing life-changing. Then another notification popped up, new close family match. I frowned, close family. That didn't make sense. I clicked on it, expecting to see my sibling or maybe a known cousin. Instead, a name I had never seen before appeared on the screen. Adam R. My eyes moved down automatically. Relationship half-sibling. For a second, my brain refused to process it. The words were there, clear and unmistakable, but they didn't fit into reality. It felt like reading something in a language I understood but couldn't accept. Half-sibling. I blinked, thinking maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe the app was wrong. Maybe it meant something else. But there it was again. Unchanged. I only had one sibling. Which meant this had to come from somewhere else. My chest tightened as a strange, uneasy feeling crept in. Before I could think too deeply about it, my phone started buzzing again. Messages flooded in. Family group chat, cousins, notifications stacking one after another. Something was happening. I opened the group chat. Sarah. Is anyone else seeing this? Another message immediately followed. I have a close match that makes no sense. My fingers hovered over the screen. Me. Yeah, I just got one too. A pause. Then more messages. What name do you have? Mine says Adam R. Same. The realization spread through the chat like wildfire. Everyone was seeing the same thing. This wasn't a glitch. This was real. A call started seconds later. One by one, everyone joined, faces appearing on the screen, confused, tense, searching for answers none of us had yet. Sarah was the first to speak, her voice shaky. Okay, someone explain this to me. It says he's my half-sibling. That's not possible. It says the same for me? I said quietly. More voices chimed in, overlapping. Mine too. This has to be an error. There's no way this is right. But even as people said it, no one sounded convinced. Because deep down, we all knew something like this didn't just happen for no reason. And then, slowly, almost reluctantly, attention shifted to the one person who hadn't said a word. My dad. His face was on the screen, but he looked different. Still, too still. The usual ease he carried was gone, replaced by something tight, something guarded. My mom glanced at him, confusion turning into something sharper. "What is this?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with something dangerous. No answer. "Tell me this is some kind of mistake." He rubbed his jaw, looking anywhere but at her. "It could be. These things aren't always accurate." It wasn't a convincing response. Not even close. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. "I asked you something," my mom said again, her tone rising just slightly. "What is this?" Still nothing. I felt my stomach drop. Because I had never seen him like this. Never seen him hesitate, never seen him struggle to respond. He always had an answer. Always, until now. Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "He messaged me." Everyone froze. "What?" I said. He said he's been trying to find his father for years." She continued, her words slow, careful, like she was afraid of what they meant. The air shifted completely. There was no pretending anymore, no brushing it off. This wasn't a random match. This was someone real. Someone who believed they belonged to us. My mom turned fully toward my dad now. "Did you have another child?" The question hung there, raw and unavoidable. For a second, it looked like he might deny it. Like he might try to twist the truth into something softer, something easier to swallow. But then his shoulders dropped slightly. And just like that, everything changed. "Yes." The word landed quietly. But it hit harder than anything else could have. No one spoke. No one even moved. It was like the entire world had paused, waiting for something, anything, to undo what had just been said. But nothing came. My mom stared at him, her expression slowly unraveling. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a loud, explosive way. Just breaking. "When?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "A long time ago," he said. "Before you. Before you." The words should have made it better. They didn't. "Then why is he here now?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Why is he looking for you if this was all before me?" He hesitated again, and that hesitation told us everything before he even spoke. "Because I never told him about me." The room, every screen, every face, fell into a stunned, suffocating silence. I felt something twist inside me. "You knew?" I asked, my voice coming out sharper than I expected. "You knew you might have a child out there and you just what? Ignored it?" "It wasn't like that," he said quickly. I wasn't sure at first, and then time passed. It felt complicated. Complicated. That word burned. "You mean inconvenient," I said. He flinched slightly, but didn't argue. My mom let out a short, broken laugh. "So you just lived your life. Married me. Had a family. And never thought to mention that somewhere out there, you might have a son." I didn't think he would ever come looking. He admitted quietly, there it was. The truth beneath everything. Not uncertainty. Not confusion. Avoidance. He had made a choice. A long time ago, and now that choice was standing at the edge of our lives, knocking. My mom shook her head slowly, like she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. "You lied to me," she said. "For years. Decades." "I didn't lie," he said weakly. "I just didn't tell you." The difference meant nothing. We all knew it. She stepped back slightly, like the space between them had suddenly become too small to breathe in. "I don't even know who you are right now," she whispered. No one had anything to say to that. Because how do you respond when the person you thought you knew completely turns into someone else in a matter of seconds? My phone buzzed again. Another message. From him. Adam. I stared at the notification, my heart pounding. He wasn't just a name on a screen anymore. He was real. And he was coming closer. Inside the call, the tension didn't break. It just stretched thinner, tighter, like something about to snap. Because we all understood it now. This wasn't just a secret. This was a person. A life. A truth that had been buried for years, finally finding its way back to us. And nothing was ever going to be the same again. He didn't give us time to prepare. There was no long exchange of messages, no careful planning, no slow introduction to ease the shock. Just 2 days after everything came out, after the tension had barely settled into something we could breathe through, there was a knock on the door. I remember the exact moment. The house felt heavier than usual, like the walls themselves were holding on to everything that had been said. My mom was in the kitchen, moving quietly, mechanically. My dad sat in the living room, staring at nothing, a man who suddenly didn't seem to know what to do with himself. The knock came again. Sharp, certain, not hesitant. I was the closest, so I went to answer it. I don't know what I expected, maybe a delivery, maybe a neighbor, anything normal. Something that didn't carry the weight of the last 2 days. But the second I opened the door, I knew. He stood there like he belonged and didn't at the same time. About my age, maybe a little older. His posture was straight, but there was a quiet tension in it, like he was holding himself together by force. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, something strange passed between us. Recognition. Not because we knew each other, but because we didn't have to. There was something familiar in his face. Not identical, not obvious at first glance, but enough. The shape of his eyes. The set of his jaw. The kind of features you don't notice until you do, and then you can't unsee them. "Hi," he said, his voice calm but carrying something deeper underneath. I think this is my father's house." My throat tightened instantly. All the conversations, all the messages, all the tension, it had led to this exact moment. And now there was no screen between us, no distance to soften it. He was real. I stepped back slightly, my hand still on the door. Yeah, that was all I could manage. I didn't ask his name. I didn't need to. I moved aside and he stepped in slowly, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to take up space yet. The air inside shifted the second he crossed the threshold. My dad looked up first. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw him hesitate in a way that made him look smaller. Not physically. But something in him shrank. They stared at each other. No words. No movement. Just two people connected by something neither of them had fully acknowledged until now. "You're him," the man said finally. It wasn't a question. My dad swallowed, then nodded. "I am." The simplicity of it felt surreal. Years of absence reduced to 2 words. I glanced toward the kitchen. My mom had stopped moving. She stood there, frozen, her back partially turned, like she didn't know whether to face what was happening or pretend it wasn't. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. And then he asked it. "Why didn't you come find me?" There was no anger in his voice. No raised tone, no accusation sharpened into something aggressive. Just quiet. And somehow, that made it worse. Because anger you can argue with. You can defend against it, push back, match its energy. But this was just pain. Honest, unfiltered, and impossible to dismiss. My dad shifted in his seat, clearly unprepared for how simple and direct the question was. "I didn't know for sure," he started, his voice uneven. "At first, it was complicated. Your mother and I, we weren't in a place where things were clear." The man, Adam, I reminded myself, didn't interrupt, he just listened. "And then time passed," my dad continued. I thought maybe it wasn't my place to interfere." Interfere. The word hung in the air, heavy with everything it didn't say. Adam nodded slowly, like he was processing each piece, fitting it into something that had never quite made sense before. "So you chose not to?" he said. Again, not a question. My dad didn't respond. Because there wasn't a response that could make it better. I stepped back further into the room, suddenly feeling like I was witnessing something too personal, too raw. But I couldn't leave. None of us could. This was happening to all of us. "I spent years wondering," Adam said after a moment. "Not even expecting anything from you. Just wondering who you were. What kind of person doesn't try to find their own kid?" There it was. Not shouted, not forced, just spoken. And it landed exactly where it needed to. My dad looked down, his hands clasped together like he was trying to hold on to something slipping through his fingers. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. Adam let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah," he said, "you did." Another silence followed, but it felt different this time, less tense, more settled. Like something that had been building for years had finally been released, even if it didn't fix anything. My mom finally turned around. Her eyes moved from Adam to my dad and back again. There was so much in her expression: hurt, disbelief, exhaustion, but also something else. Understanding. Not acceptance, But the realization that this wasn't just about her anymore. This was bigger. "You should sit down," she said quietly to Adam. He hesitated for a second, then nodded and took a seat across from my dad. The distance between them felt symbolic. Not just physical, but emotional. Years of absence sitting right there in the space between two chairs. "No one told me about you?" Adam said, his voice calmer now. "Not him, not anyone. I found out through my mom, and even then, it was vague. She didn't want me to hate you." My dad flinched slightly. "I didn't hate you?" Adam added. "I didn't know you well enough for that. I just didn't understand." My chest tightened at that. Because that kind of honesty doesn't leave room for denial. It doesn't allow anyone to hide. "I'm sorry," my dad said. It sounded small, insufficient. Adam studied him for a moment, then nodded once. Okay, that was it. No dramatic reaction. No emotional breakdown. Just a simple acknowledgement. And somehow, that was heavier than anything else he could have said. I realized then that he hadn't come here for a fight. He hadn't come to demand anything, or to force his way into our lives. He had come for something much quieter, answers, closure, something to fill the empty spaces in his own story. And now that he had it, he didn't know what came next. Neither did we. The room stayed still, like everyone was waiting for the next step, the next word, the next decision. But there wasn't one. Because some moments don't come with clear directions. Some truths don't tell you how to move forward. They just exist. And you have to figure out how to live with them. Adam leaned back slightly, exhaling like he had just set something down after carrying it for a long time. "I'm not here to take anything from anyone," he said after a while. "I don't want to disrupt your lives." I glanced at him, surprised by how steady he sounded. "I just needed to know," he added. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. He wasn't the disruption. He wasn't the problem. He was the consequence of a choice made years ago, a truth ignored, a responsibility left behind. And now, standing in the middle of our home, he wasn't asking for a place. He was just acknowledging that he had always existed. Whether we were ready for it or not, after Adam left that first day, the house didn't return to normal. It couldn't. Something invisible had shifted, like a crack running through glass. You could still see through it, still function around it, but you knew it would never be whole again. No one said it out loud, but we all felt it. My mom moved differently, not dramatically. Not in a way that would draw attention, but in small, quiet ways that said everything. She stopped sitting next to my dad. Stopped reaching for him absent-mindedly. Even their conversations became functional, stripped down to the bare minimum. "Did you eat? I'll be late?" "There's food in the fridge." That was it. No warmth, no softness, just words that filled space without meaning. My dad tried, at first. He lingered in rooms longer than necessary, as if proximity alone could fix things. He asked questions he didn't usually ask, offered help in ways that felt unfamiliar. But every attempt seemed to bounce off something invisible surrounding her. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't breaking things. She was withdrawing. And somehow, that hurt more to watch. At night, the house became even quieter. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. I started noticing things I had never paid attention to before. The soft creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint sound of movement from the other room. And sometimes, if everything else was still enough, I could hear it. My mom crying. Not loudly. Not in a way that demanded attention. Just soft, controlled, like she was trying to keep it contained. But it wasn't contained. It seeped into everything. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. There's a kind of helplessness that comes from hearing someone you love break in silence. You don't know whether to go to them, or pretend you didn't hear it. You don't know if comfort will help or just make it worse. So I stayed still. And listened. Adam didn't disappear after that first meeting. He didn't suddenly try to insert himself into our lives either. Instead, he hovered at the edges, present, but careful. He rented a small place not too far away. Close enough to reach us if needed, but far enough to respect the boundaries that hadn't been clearly defined yet. It was strange, knowing he was there. Like having a new piece added to a puzzle you had already completed years ago. You could see where it fit, but adjusting everything around it felt complicated. The first time I met him alone was almost accidental. I had gone out to get coffee, needing a break from the house, from the tension, from the constant feeling that something was about to snap. I didn't expect to see him there, sitting by the window, staring down into a cup like it held answers. For a second, I considered leaving. But then he looked up, recognition flickered across his face, followed by something softer. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I replied, walking over before I could overthink it. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. I shook my head. "No." We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that isn't entirely comfortable but not unbearable either. Just unfamiliar. "This is weird," I said finally, letting out a small breath. He nodded slightly. "Yeah, it is." That was the thing about him. He didn't try to pretend it wasn't complicated. He didn't force conversation or act like everything was fine. He just acknowledged reality. We started meeting like that. Not regularly, not scheduled, just whenever it happened. Coffee, short walks, small conversations that slowly became less awkward over time. Piece by piece, I learned about him. His childhood hadn't been tragic in the way people might expect. His mom had been strong, steady, doing everything she could to give him a good life. But there had always been a gap, a space where questions lived. "She told me the truth," he said one afternoon, tracing the rim of his cup with his finger. "Not all at once, but enough." "What did she say?" I asked. "That you existed," he replied. "That he existed, just not in detail." I swallowed slightly. "Did you ever try to find him before this?" He shook his head. "Not seriously." I thought about it, but I didn't know where to start. And part of me didn't want to. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because if I found him, it would mean facing whatever reason he didn't come looking for me." That stayed with me. Because it wasn't just about finding someone. It was about facing rejection that had already happened, just without words. Meanwhile, at home, things kept unraveling. My dad had stopped pretending everything was okay. The easy confidence he used to carry was gone, replaced by something heavier. Regret. Maybe. Or the realization that there were consequences he couldn't charm his way out of. One night, everything finally came to a head. It wasn't loud at first. Just voices from the kitchen, low and tense. I wasn't trying to listen, but the walls felt thinner these days. "I can't keep doing this," my mom said. There was a pause. "Doing what?" my dad asked, though his voice already sounded like he knew the answer. "This," she said, her tone sharper now. "Pretending like we're fine. Like this is something we can just move past. We can work through it." He insisted. "We've been through things before." "Not like this," she snapped. The words cut through the air. "This isn't some small mistake," she continued. "This is a life. A whole life you kept from me." "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "But you did," she replied immediately. "And not just now. Every day you chose not to tell me you were hurting me. You just didn't have to see it." Silence followed, heavy. Final. "I look at you now, and I don't know who I'm looking at," she said, her voice quieter but more painful somehow. "I don't know what else you're capable of hiding." "I told you everything now," he said. "Because you got caught," she said. That was it. There was no arguing with that. No defending it. I heard movement, chairs shifting, footsteps. "I need space," she said. And then, just like that, it happened. Not with a dramatic exit or a slammed door. She packed a bag, calmly, quietly. Like she had already made the decision long before she said it out loud. I stood in the hallway, watching as she moved past me. She paused for a second, her eyes meeting mine. There was sadness there. But also strength. "I'm okay," she said softly, even though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. Then she left. The door closed behind her with a soft click. And in that moment, the house felt emptier than it ever had before. My dad didn't move for a long time. He just stood there, staring at the door, like if he waited long enough, she might walk back in. But she didn't. Because some things, once broken, don't go back to the way they were. They force you to face what's left and figure out what to do next. The house didn't feel like home anymore after she left. It wasn't just the absence of her presence. It was the absence of everything she held together without anyone realizing. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. For the first few days, it felt like we were all just waiting. Waiting for her to come back. for things to reset, for reality to correct itself. But it didn't. My dad moved through the house like a shadow of himself. The same man who once filled every room with energy now barely made a sound. He stopped telling stories, stopped laughing, stopped trying to command attention. It was like the version of him we all knew had been stripped away, leaving behind someone smaller, someone forced to face himself without the distraction of being admired. I watched him one morning standing in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He didn't drink it, didn't move, just stood there like he didn't know what to do next. For the first time, I didn't feel angry at him. I just saw him. A man who had made a choice years ago and was now living inside the consequences of it. But understanding didn't erase what he had done. It just made it harder to hate him as easily. My mom, on the other hand, didn't disappear. She didn't collapse into the kind of grief that consumes everything. Instead, she did something I hadn't expected. She rebuilt. At first, it was small things. She stayed with a friend for a few days, then found a temporary place of her own. She started organizing her life in a way that didn't revolve around him. New routines, new spaces, new decisions. When I visited her the first time after she left, I expected to see someone broken. But she wasn't. She looked tired, yes. There were shadows under her eyes, and her smile didn't come as easily as it used to. But there was something else there. Clarity. I didn't lose myself. She told me as we sat across from each other, cups of tea between us. I just forgot that I had a choice. I didn't know what to say to that. Because it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her. About years of trust built on something incomplete. I loved him, she continued quietly. And maybe a part of me always will. But love doesn't excuse this. It doesn't erase it. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't questioning herself. She had already decided. I need to know who I am without him, she said. And for the first time, I realized that what she was doing wasn't running away. It was choosing herself. That realization stayed with me, because I had spent so much time thinking of this situation as something that happened to us. But it was also something we could respond to, something we could grow from. Adam became a steady presence during all of this. Not overwhelming, not intrusive. Just there. We kept meeting, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by coincidence. The conversations became easier over time, less guarded. We stopped dancing around the situation and started speaking more honestly. One evening, we sat outside a small cafe, the air cool and quiet. "Do you regret finding us?" I asked him. He leaned back slightly, considering the question. "No," he said after a moment. "Even if it's messy, at least it's real." That word again. Real. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't comfortable. But it was honest. "I don't know where I fit in all this," he admitted. "I'm not trying to replace anything. I just don't want to feel like I'm standing outside my own story anymore." "You're not," I said. And I meant it. Because whether we were ready or not, he had always been part of it. We just hadn't known. Our relationship didn't become something dramatic or forced. There were no sudden declarations of closeness, no attempt to rewrite the past. We built something slower, something real. A connection that didn't ignore the pain, but didn't let it define everything either. As for my dad, things didn't magically improve. He tried to reach out to my mom, but she kept her distance. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. She needed space to figure out her own life without being pulled back into something that had already hurt her too deeply. He had to sit with that, with the silence, with the absence, with the understanding that some consequences don't come with immediate forgiveness. One day, he said something that stuck with me. "I thought I had everything under control," he admitted. "I thought if I ignored it long enough, it would just stay in the past." "But it didn't," I said. "No," he replied. "It didn't. That was the truth of it. The past doesn't stay buried just because you want it to. It waits. And when it comes back, it doesn't ask for permission. It demands to be seen." In the middle of all this, something shifted inside me too. I stopped looking at my life as something fixed, something defined by the people around me. I stopped assuming that stability meant truth, or that silence meant everything was okay. I started asking questions. Not just about my family, but about myself. What did I want? What did I deserve? What kind of life was I building? Because if there was one thing this experience made clear, it was that you can't build something real on half-truths. Eventually, the chaos settled. Not into what it used to be, but into something new. Something different. My mom found her footing, stronger than before. Not untouched by what happened, but not defined by it either. Adam found a place, not forced, not assigned, but earned through patience and honesty. My dad changed. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to understand that the version of himself he had relied on for years wasn't enough anymore. And me. I stopped waiting for everything to make sense before moving forward. Because sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you don't get clean endings or perfect resolutions. You just get the truth. And what you do with it. In the end, this wasn't just about a secret coming to light. It was about what happens after. After the shock, after the pain, after everything you thought was solid starts to shift. It's easy to break when that happens. To stay stuck in the hurt, in the betrayal, in the anger. But there's another choice. A harder one. To stand up. To see clearly. To decide that what happened to you doesn't get to define who you become. I used to think being underestimated was a weakness. Something that left you vulnerable. Now I see it differently. Being underestimated means people don't see your strength coming. They don't expect you to rise. To rebuild. To become something stronger than before. And that's the thing about strength. It doesn't always show up in loud, dramatic ways. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Like starting over. Like choosing yourself when everything else is falling apart. This wasn't the story I thought I was living. But it became something else. Something real. Something honest. Something that proved that even when everything breaks, you don't have to.